Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. You're looking live, Ellensburg, Washington, USA, where the sun's just coming up, and we've had some light snow overnight. And thank you for being here early on a Saturday morning, the local time is 7:47 a.m. Pacific time. And today's date, Saturday, December 14th, 2024. Looks like we're 5 by 5. That means loud and clear, and thank you for that report. It's a big pleasure to be with you. I can tell my mouth is rusty right now. I need to wake up, get myself going, even though I've been up for a few hours already. I said goodbye to Bijou the cat and walked through the snow, but I need to get myself going. So let me say hi. Let me multitask. I can say hi and ask where are you viewing from. I can also get my brain and my mouth working properly. And of course, we'll start our program in 12 minutes at the top of the hour if you're watching in replay. Red Lodge, Montana. Auckland, New Zealand. Hello, Greg. Boise, Idaho. Vienna, Austria. Florida. Edmonton, Alberta. LaPorte, Minnesota. Jefferson City, Missouri. I know that's Mark. Bisk or Bisk, Sweden. Rainy, windy, Browns Point, Washington. Where's that, Paul? I should know where that is. Is that Tacoma, maybe? Natchez. That's not French, says Pat. Falls City, Washington. That's Kevin. Marion, Virginia. That's Eric. These are regular viewers. Christmas Valley, Oregon. That's Bill. Hoquiam, Washington. Red Deer, Alberta. Hoquiam, Washington again. I guess somebody else. Therese is from the Netherlands. Andy is from a snowy and chilly Port Wing, Wisconsin. Fiddly Bits says, hooray, what a great way to start the morning in Ritzville, Washington. Thank you for that. Now, this is a nice way to start the day. Don reports in Fairbanks it is -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Thank you, Don. Our grandson, Luca Zentner, 4 months old, went on his first aeroplane last night from Bellingham up to Anchorage. He's with his grandparents and his mother. So, looks like they got settled up there, and I'll be interested to hear how that first plane ride went at 4 months. Adelaide, Australia, that's Patricia. Hello, Patricia. Clayton, New Mexico. Hayden, Idaho, uppercase, exclamation point. I see you, Angie. Tinley Park, Illinois. Hi from freezing cold Germany, says Sissy Schnotterschnoot. Okay. Charles is in Prosser, Washington. It's probably, yeah, it is foggy down there. Okay. 85 miles from Nick's place. Hello, Charles. So pleasant, so pleased, so nice to see so many of you here. We have, more than 300 here tuning in live a solid 10 minutes before we begin. Always so nice to see that. I'm always flattered and weirdly surprised each time. I don't know why. Stephen is in Missoula, Montana. David's in Fairwood, Washington. Milwaukee, Oregon. That's a relative of the Bennetts who used to live here in Ellensburg. Isn't that right? Leamington Spa, UK. Anna says, good evening from Lakau, Finland. Looking for familiar names and unfamiliar names. Looking for familiar places and unfamiliar places. Good. The lips are working. Saber is back in Baja, California, Mexico. Good job. Kirk from Philomath, Oregon. That's outside of Corvallis. Kirk is the creator of all of these stylish mugs. Thank you, Kirk. I've been giving your mugs to many geologists and other associates who are doing special things as part of this community. So I'm keeping up on that. Kirk, thanks. Rob says, good morning from the Hayward Fault in California. Steven says, San Francisco checking in, also in California. Foggy Lyle, Washington, down the Columbia River Gorge. Post Falls, Idaho. I just love that we have this community and we're all checking in from all these distant locations. There's something old-fashioned about that, I guess. I don't know. Is it really old-fashioned? I don't know why. I feel weirdly nostalgic, even though it's happening right now. What am I even talking about? I don't know. But we're all here together. Maybe that's what it is. I feel like when we used to just have 3 channels on a television set, everybody was watching the same thing at the same time, and there was kind of a weird community. Even though I will stop. Maybe I have an actual thought, but that's. Okay, come on, man. I got to get going here. Come on, let's go. Garrett, the Dutch night owl from the Netherlands. Oh, Norley is in Iraq now. I just, maybe it's because she's been off for so long, but I've just been thoroughly enjoying each of the Itchy Boots videos. If you do not know about Itchy Boots YouTube channel starring Norley Schoenemaker from the Netherlands. She's riding her motorcycle. I'm not a motorcycle person. I don't care about motorcycles. I care about her and how she operates and how she just is an amazing ambassador for just the human spirit, let alone the geography and getting a chance to see all these crazy places that none of us ever get a chance to see. Turkey for the last 2 months and now crossing into Iraq. This episode brought to you by Itchy Boots. You've got to love it. Gig Harbor, Washington. Yeah, get the train on the rails. That's right, Don. Some mornings it just flows beautifully. Do you do public speaking, or are you just whatever your line of work is or was? Do you rely on your mouth? Sometimes it just works and sometimes it doesn't. Diet, sleep, I don't know what it is. Dew point. I got some good stuff this morning. I can't be half foggy this morning. No pun intended. Okay, I'm going to take my walk out in the snow. Let me just. We got blue skies. Okay. All right, maybe. Oh yeah. Well, we got some sun. That's the science building that's now lit up in early morning sun. That's where biology and chemistry is happening. Or not anymore. We just finished up final exam week, so it's about time where the university says, well, nobody works over the Christmas break, so we're just going to save a bunch of money and turn all the heaters down, which makes sense in general, I guess, but that means I have to bring sleeping bags and extra layers because I am doing things in my office. It's a lonely life here over a break, but I really enjoy it. I hope that's clear. A few more hellos, and then I'm going to take a little walk. Wintergreen, California, Kingman, Arizona, Seattle, Washington, Denmark, Nanaimo, British Columbia. Yeah, it's the first significant snow, Gary, Alberta Gary, of the year for Ellensburg. Just like whatever, an inch, fluffy white stuff. Spirit Lake, Idaho. Yep. Okay, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy this morning's program. I have a variety of things, both new and old, I'll explain in just a bit. So I need to take a walk. Thank you. We'll start in 5 minutes. Hot mic. Okay. The hardest part is getting started, right? How are you going to get started? You're going to tell a story. You're going to start with a story. And you know what the point of the story is, so get to the point. Don't spend 10 minutes on the story, boy, because you got a lot to cover, and the information is solid. And you can follow the slides. That's no problem. You don't have to have it all memorized. But you've got the chalkboard and the slides to guide you. You've got all your papers laid out. You've got your rock samples ready. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. God. I'm going to go eat some snow. Just paralyze my tongue. Speaking of that, go. Go take your walk. Here we go. I got my keys. A pleasant good morning to you all, and welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA. This is another episode of the Cascades A to Z live stream series, and this is episode E, Siletzia Swauk. And if you've been watching this channel for a number of years, you're like, I don't think I'm going to learn anything new today. I know everything about Siletzia. Come on, man. And I know about the Swauk formation as well. So is this really going to be something that's a bunch of new stuff? Yeah, there's some new stuff for me, and then I'm guessing if it's new for me, maybe it's new for you as well. But I think this morning will also be some rather rudimentary or basic material as well, just to make sure we can get everybody connected to some of these concepts. But I'd like to start with a quick story. I hope it's a quick story, but as I was walking in to the building this morning, crunching my way through the snow, I'm thinking, like, how am I going to start this morning? And I basically asked myself as I was walking, when did I first start hearing about Siletzia? Because when I arrived here in 1992, nobody was talking about this thing called Siletzia. And so the answer is, in the early 2000s, one of our students, Andy Miner, was the first to really tell me about Siletzia. And I still remember where I was standing in the hallway in the old building talking to Andy, and he's describing, we used to have this Icelandic-like island off the coast of Washington, and that thing got added to North America to add to the geology of Washington. And this is like 2002 or 2003, and I'm like, what? And I was kind of confused and like depressed that I didn't know about it, and then suddenly I got pretty excited. And over the past 20 years or so, I have been understanding more and more about the work of Siletzia, and the papers keep coming. The published papers keep coming on Siletzia. And this is becoming a major story in the Pacific Northwest, things related to Siletzia. Maybe the major story of the tectonics of the entire Pacific Northwest of the last 100 million years. I guess it depends who you talk to, but it's a big deal now, and obviously I've been spending a lot of time talking about it. And yet I'd like to get into some basics as well for those that are brand new to the channel and don't know about this. But you know what? I don't want to do the story. I think I just decided. Andy Miner's the answer. This student who did a master's thesis on Siletzia from Central Washington University. Okay, changed my mind. I do want to tell the story. So Andy, when I arrived, Andy Miner was just graduating as an undergraduate. There were just a handful of majors in 1992 when I arrived. There were 3 professors about ready to retire, and there were just like less than 10 geology majors. And one of the first students I met, and he was just about to graduate, was this kid, Andy Miner. And he was quiet. I couldn't quite, people like that. He's like a poker player. I couldn't really tell what he was thinking as he's talking to me, and I'm the new guy, But it became clear that Andy was a very, very bright young man, and he had just finished a senior thesis on the Burbank Lahar, which is some Lahar deposits between Ellensburg and Yakima. It's right along the freeway at the Yakima County line, the Kittitas County, Yakima County line. Those that know that drive, when it's not snowing and closed like it was last night, you might have noticed a concrete wall, basically. That's a lahar that's vertical, right at the county line, right next to the freeway. Andy worked on that. Okay, don't make it a long story. Okay, well, I want to go to the Circle Cam because I was so excited to share the Andy Miner story that if you click on Cascades, I just added this paper like 10 minutes ago before we started. Here is the senior thesis of Andy Miner to give you a feeling for the quality of work that was done here at CWU as I was arriving. And this has got nothing to do with Siletzia today, so why am I telling the story? Andy graduated, he left, and my job was to recruit geology students to make new majors, to bring people in and keep them in the program. And if I did my job as the new person and add to the number of geology majors here, we could eventually hire new professors. Then we could eventually build a graduate program and have master's students here. And then maybe one day we would actually have enough clout and enough growth as a geology department that we would have a new building built. Well, all of that happened. This is the new building. And I had a big part in making that happen, and it feels good every time I walk into this building. But my point is, one of the first graduate students was Andy Miner. He came back in the late 1990s to do a master's thesis on Siletzia, supervised by Professor Megan Miller, who was the department chair at the time. And that's when I started learning about Siletzia. There's another reason I'm telling you the story, is that Mike Eddy, we're kind of taking a break from Goat Rocks for a while, and Hannah Shamloo, she's probably relieved to hear that. Well, we're going to start talking more and more about Mike Eddy, the Spirit Lake Pluton guy, but we're going to talk about Mike's work before the Spirit Lake Pluton project. And Mike Eddy, first at Princeton and then at MIT in Boston, when he's starting to put together a dissertation project, Mike Eddy in Boston started going online and finding any theses he could find, master's theses, senior undergraduate theses, projects at Central Washington University, Western Washington University, UW, University of Washington, Oregon State, Portland State. And Mike Eddy, in his 20s, had the good sense to try to get as much previous work read. And as I've learned from him with some of these interviews, he's like, I couldn't believe the quality of the work being done in these master's projects that were just sitting on a shelf. And Andy Miner's thesis was one of the main things that inspired Mike to work on this paper that we're going to talk about today. So Andy Miner still lives in Cle Elum. I just got an email from him last night. He saw the Silver Pass Volcanics video and had some tips for me. But it's that kind of connection between work being done here by students that's inspiring very exciting professional work done by professors around the country and around the world coming here to do work in the Cascades. Okay, so the chalkboard is kind of cryptic this morning. We're going to start by talking about the suture between Siletzia in the basement and Grello. We're done talking about the basement, but I want to just look at that suture just a little bit more to set up our discussions today. Then I want to build Siletzia out in the water and talk about why and when and how Siletzia was built and what was it for those that are unfamiliar. Then I want to transition to the Swauk Basin, the sedimentary basin, and focus on what it was such a tranquil scene. It was such a peaceful, calm lull before the storm, calm before the storm. The storm is 51 million years ago, as you know from last episode, when Siletzia gets sideswiped by us. Siletzia didn't hit us, we hit Siletzia. But regardless how you think about it, there was a major collision, and the impact and the aftermath of that collision with Siletzia, we're starting to realize so much of the geology, including Cascades geology, is tied to that Siletzia story. So let's try this to start. I'm really in improv mode here, just basically to wake myself up. Let's draw something quick. Okay, here we are. I'm not going to see you again until Thursday at noon Pacific for episode F. And I'll get Andy Miner's master's thesis put together. I don't have it all in one place, but I'll have that for you next episode. You know our routine by now. Okay, let's try this. I don't know if anybody's thinking this out there. But maybe you're thinking, look, I signed up for Cascades A to Z. You didn't sign up, but whatever. And one major buzzkill is when I realized that you're not going to talk about the Cascades in California or the Cascades in Oregon very much or the Cascades in British Columbia. So that was a buzzkill. And now I'm still tuning in. I don't know why. And now you're burning through letters and you're not even talking about the Cascades yet. You're not even talking about the Cascades volcanoes. Like, what are you doing? Are you stalling? This is like last winter when it felt like I kept stalling before we got to eastern Washington, the channeled scablands. Like, what are you doing? You got Brett's over in the Satsep gravels and stuff. You're just killing time. Are you afraid of eastern Washington? That was last winter. Now this winter, it's like, are you afraid of the Cascades? Why aren't you starting with letter A and starting to talk about Cascade volcanic arc stuff? Well, it should be obvious to you right now, but the basement of the Goat Rocks was important. So we've kind of checked that box and learned a bunch of new things along the way. At least I did. Maybe you knew it all, but I didn't know all that stuff. And this Siletzia thing also is pre-Cascades. So what I want to draw with you right now, I'm thoroughly wide awake, by the way, just in case you're curious. This is what's known as a volcanic arc. Again, I'm going back and forth between 101 content and more advanced content today. For some reason, I feel like I want to do that. So a volcanic arc happens when you have two tectonic plates colliding and you have a thin, dense oceanic plate colliding with a thicker, more lightweight continental plate. And this is the North American plate colliding with the Farallon plate, if you like. And as long as we subduct that oceanic crust, and along the oceanic crust has a bunch of water inside of it, once we get to a certain depth, that water is forced out of the subducting plate, and we start generating magmas, blobs of magmas. We're not melting the plate because we know the plate continues all the way down to the lower mantle. Karin Siglock and Spencer Fuston and others have been doing the mantle tomography. But we're generating some melts here, and those melts start rising through the continental crust, and we eventually get volcanic eruptions. If we lose the heat and some of those liquid blobs turn to solid rock, that's a pluton. So these plutons we've been talking about regularly so far, kind of casually, the Spirit Lake Pluton, the Squire Creek Pluton, the Granite Falls Pluton, the Snoqualmie Pluton, the Tatoosh Pluton. You're like, I haven't heard those. Well, those are coming. This is all part of a volcanic arc. And a volcanic arc, this means line. And so this is a line of volcanoes. And on a map, you just have, in the case of the Cascades, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, Nevada. Almost all of us know that we have a line of these stratovolcanoes or composite cone volcanoes. That's the Cascade volcanic arc. And you're like, why didn't we start with that with letter A? We needed to build the basement first. We needed to pour the foundation. And then the other major job we need to do before we start the Cascade volcanic arc is what? Add Siletzia so that we can get the trench set up at the appropriate place and we can get the volcanic arc to set up at the appropriate place. And so Daddy's going to use his color scheme and use blue and say that, are we talking about the Cascade volcanic arc? Yeah, we are, but not today. 46 million years ago is when we start the Cascade volcanic arc. 46. So we've had two numbers so far in the alphabet that are big, big numbers. What was the one from last episode? 51. And 51 will be stressed again today and probably into next Thursday as well. 51. But 51 is not the start of the Cascade volcanic arc. Instead, 46 million years ago is the start of setting up this subducting plate, starting to send magmas in this position, X number of miles inland from the oceanic trench, and we start the Cascade Volcanic Arc. And that means we've had the Cascade Volcanic Arc in that basic location, in that rough location. That line of stratovolcanoes has been there for 46 million years. And they're still there. If I go out and take a walk this afternoon, I'll see it. Nice and clear. I'll see Rainier from our valley. That's part of the volcanic arc. Okay? That's why we're spending so much time getting ourselves set up for the birth of the Cascades. So if we go to, let's see, if we go to CircleCam and we look yet again at Mark's color scheme, which is nicely done. Come on, thank you. We're going to have the Cascades start in blue time, and here we are in episode E, and I think maybe F, I'm not entirely sure, but I think episode F is going to be trying to deal with oceanic plates, struggling with all that stuff yet again. And I did that with the Idaho miniseries this summer. But this is coming. That's my point. The birth of the Cascades is coming a couple letters from now. But we are firmly pre-Cascades today. I hope that helps. With that background, let's go ahead. It's 15 after. Let's go. How are we going to do it? Well, let's go back to the slides and see what I've got planned. I'm laying this stuff out for me so that I don't have to memorize everything. Yeah, okay. So I did this more than 5 years ago, and I did not totally understand at the time that I did this sketch the significance of the crescent basalt. Look at how tiny it is in here. This is Siletzia. And in the last 6 or 7 years, I've realized that the amount and the significance and the importance of this Siletzia basalt, known locally in Washington as the crescent basalt, is maybe the major story. It sure doesn't look like in this cross-section that I've made. But yeah, we're done building the basement. There's the Rimrock Lake inlier. There's the crystalline core. And we are now firmly into the Swauk, which is the dominant name, but there's also Chuckanut and Guy, Member, and some other things. The PTM we're going to talk about today. Okay, good. Let's keep it going. You've seen this a number of times. I'm not going to dwell on it again, but we now have a good sense that the crescent basalt, in other words, Siletzia, on the Olympic Peninsula, does extend into the subsurface. It appears to be flirting with the Cascade Volcanic Arc, and we are now thinking about where that suture is, the suture in the subsurface between Siletzia to the west and the Arcosic Melange to the east. Tom from Maple Valley, he's at it again. Thank you, Tom. So Tom is now giving us an orange map. Thank you for following the colors. And this is the extent at the surface of the Siletzia basalt. So here's downtown Seattle. Here's Hood Canal. Here's Port Angeles. Here's Forks. Ocean Shores, Washington, and Westport and Hoquiam right in here. This is Grays Harbor. Do you have any sense of this turf? Here's Mount Rainier. Ellensburg's way the hell over here. I'm thinking of people watching from a long way away who have never been to Washington, maybe never will come to Washington. But I do feel like I want to help have this sink in. So it's not the entire Olympic Peninsula that's made of Siletzia basalt. It's just this area in orange, courtesy of Tom. Here's Ken Clark, University of Puget Sound, who's giving us a stylized look at the same thing. Now, we're disregarding the colors, but still nice. Siletzia volcanics. Another way to look at it. Yeah, I did a video with Jeff Tepper at Tamanous Rock. We're not quite ready for that yet, but we're getting close. We're getting closer. And purple is our modern Cascades, and then here's some of this earliest stuff that we'll get into soon enough. Robert S. Hildebrand gives us a beautiful map. Lots of detail using our colors: orange, Siletzia; grello, Arcosic Melange; gray, crystalline core, Seattle, the location. Mike Eddy, who's colorblind. At one point we were hiking together and I'm like, Mike, why are your colors so vivid in your, I mean, it's kind of nice. It's so bold. He says, I'm colorblind. It's like, okay, that explains it. So here's Mike Eddy with today's paper, the 2015 paper, I think. Maybe it's the 2017, I forget actually. And he is putting our suture in there. This dashed line coming right through Seattle is our subsurface boundary between Siletzia basement and Western Melange basement. So the last show was viewed by many of you, including this geologist here. Do you remember this guy? Jordan Carey? Last spring, I did 2 videos out in the channeled scablands with a close collaborator here, a guy half my age. He's 32. I'm 62. He's the future of this department. Jordan Carey. He's charismatic, and what I was doing in 1992, he is doing now, and he's bringing them in. Our student body in geology is growing, not just holding steady, but growing because of this really talented teacher, Jordan Carey. And I bring up Jordan, and by the way, Jordan and I were out just screwing around on a rainy day, and we just happened to run into Jerome Lessman, Dan Coe from the Washington Geological Survey, Karen from the local tribe, and Joel Gombiner. So many of these guys, or these 2 guys, were a big part of last winter, and we just, okay, it wasn't total accident. I knew Jerome was in the area, so we happened to run into each other. My point is, Jordan's been watching these with Hannah Shamloo. Maybe they're watching right now. Look for Jor Score in the live chat. If you see that, that's him. Jordan is a wonderful guy. He's also a very talented teacher. And so when we get a chance to visit, he said, hey, saw episode D. And he did. We were walking to school together. He lives in our neighborhood. And he said, out of all that stuff, I think the thing that I was most surprised by was how old the Seattle Fault is, according to Megan Anderson. I'm like, yeah, that was kind of cool that we kind of brushed over. And there were a couple of questions in the live chat from the last episode talking about that. And it is tied, I think, to the addition or the accretion of Siletzia. So I made a little cartoon inspired by Jordan's comment and also by some of those folks who were asking, some of you guys that were asking in the live chat. He goes to it. First off, I want to boldly put in the boundary. I want to boldly put in the suture, the Siletzia suture. And I cheated. I put it in lightly with pencil, so I'm just tracing now. So it seems like I'm super brave, but I'm not. I'm chicken. Mark, 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 mark. So what's this? Is this a highway? No. This is a highway. This is Interstate 90. This is Interstate 5. But what I'm trying to draw right now, I think most of you know what this is. This is the eastern margin of Siletzia. And therefore, a majority of the bedrock west of this black line is exotic terrain Siletzia that was added when? 51 million years ago. I should have used brown here because this is what I did. Let's see if you like this. So I'm not going to go back to Megan Anderson's paper necessarily, but I'm trying to amplify a portion of Megan Anderson's paper that was kind of brushed over because we were so focused on getting the Grello down to the Columbia River Gorge and so on. But I'm pausing now just to kind of see if this makes a little bit more sense to you. It might spur some more questions. You know, again, I think that's what good diagrams do. I don't know if this is a good one, but pretty sure I've got this right. This is downtown Seattle. This is something known as the Seattle Fault. And more than 1,000 years ago, there was a tremendous earthquake on the Seattle Fault that the south side of the Seattle Fault went up and the north side of the Seattle Fault went down. A total offset of 21 feet. 21 feet of sudden, abrupt motion on the Seattle Fault. That's the headline. We didn't even know about the Seattle Fault until 1992, again, when I showed up in Ellensburg. But from Megan's work, she has helped us see geophysically that in the subsurface north of the Seattle Fault and in the subsurface south of the Seattle Fault, the suture between Siletzia and Grello is slightly different. You might remember in that interview I said, am I right that the suture, I don't think I didn't use that term, the boundary between Siletzia and Western Melange Belt, Megan, is vertical? And she says, well, yeah, I guess, but it depends on what you mean by vertical. And here's what that was a nice way of saying no. Instead, she's like, well, I guess it's an average of being vertical, but if you look in the north, the Siletzia stuff is being crammed underneath the Arcosic Melange. This is not a subducting plate. This is just material we're building the basement and we're shoving some of the Siletzia basement under the Grello basement. But geophysically south of downtown Seattle, it's the opposite. And some of the Siletzia basement is shoved up onto something called abducted. It's being shoved up the ramp as opposed to shoving it underneath Grello. And you're like, who cares? I guess it is who cares as far as is there Siletzia in the lower crust intersecting with the Cascade magmas coming up in the Cascade Volcanic Arc. I guess that is a who cares. But the thing that Jordan Carey locked into is that this fundamental difference is tied to the days of bringing Siletzia in 51 million years ago, and there's a tear. Megan said this in her paper. This is the structural transition between this picture, and therefore we've got 51 million years of history on something called the Seattle Fault. Not just 3 million years or 10 million years, but 51 million years. It's a major story. I'll leave it alone, but that on map view and now in cross-section gives us a sense of the Siletzia suture zone. Moving on, back to a map now, just to make sure we can all see this. Disregard the colors now. These are professional diagrams, right? And I'm not going to take the time to redraft each professional map to make it work for our colors. I hope you can just roll with it. But this pink here is the extent of Siletzia that we know about in the subsurface. And then in bright red are the portions of Siletzia that are above ground on geologic maps, known in Oregon as the Siletz River volcanics. And the Siletzia basalt in Washington, colored in blue here, known as the Crescent. And the Siletzia basalt in the south tip of Vancouver Island, BC, known locally as the Mechosin. We have the extent of Siletzia, and here's our boundary. Here's our suture that we were just talking about. Are you a beginner? We're looking at the Siletzia basalt, but it was not erupted in its location today. For 50 years ago, geologists who were mapping these basalts were going, my God, we must have had some crazy basaltic eruptions in Western Oregon and in Western Washington. But it wasn't erupted in Western Washington. This basalt was not erupted in Western Oregon. It was erupted out in the Pacific Ocean. We're about to build it. It was built completely out there in the water and then was added. That's why Andy Miner in 2002 was telling me about an Icelandic island. He was talking about Siletzia, and I'm like, what that? I've never heard that before. He's like, well, we're just starting to publish on it. And Andy was one of the first to catch wind of Ray Wells's work and then started doing his own work as a graduate student here at Central Washington University. Different map showing the same thing. I think this is Ray Wells, but I can't even remember. Same idea. Now we've got different shades of green. The darker green, those are the mapped exposures of Siletzia, and then the lighter green is what's in the subsurface. And yeah, we're headed to something called the Gobel Volcanics. That's too young. The Gray River Volcanics. I want to learn all this stuff. I want to put all these stories together. But we're just learning the basics this morning about Siletzia. So when you look at a map pattern and you are willing if you look at that kind of north-south pattern of where we find Siletzia basalt today in western Washington and western Oregon, it's kind of a sausage, right? It's kind of long and thin, north-south. And so it's reasonable, even with a brand new drawing, beautifully drawn by Ken Clark, University of Puget Sound, it's reasonable to just kind of imagine this hot dog shake, this sausage-shaped thing out there in the water, and you just slide this thing in and fill the Columbian Bayment, and we're back to that. But we're going to really think a little bit more about potential shapes of this thing. And is it really just out there by itself? And why is there heat out there? I think many of you know this answer, but I want to be inclusive with everybody. Okay? How are we doing so far? We are wrapping up the suture and we're getting to the build it part. But if we go back to Docky, this suture, which hopefully makes sense to you now in cross section, is this suture, which hopefully makes sense to you, basically coming down Interstate 5, not quite, but something similar. I find it interesting that the suture is pretty close to Mount St. Helens, and the suture between Siletzia and the older basement is also in the neighborhood of Spirit Lake Pluton, but not quite. Goat Rock's quite a ways away at the surface, but again, I was asking about the subsurface. Okay, I'm feeling really alive right now. I also feel like I'm not very efficient this morning, but maybe it's just one of those mornings where we're just a little bit more playful than we normally are. I don't know. I'm having fun. Hopefully you are too. What's next? I don't know. Another map? Okay, we get it. And Ray Wells, 2014, it was 10 years ago, had something similar to what Megan Anderson was presenting to us last time. The blues are interpreted as not basalt, and the pinks and oranges and reds are interpreted as the Siletzia basalt. So this is Washington, this is Oregon, this is in Ray Wells's paper. Megan helped us see that this is the Spirit Lake Pluton, I do believe, surrounded by Grello. Okay, I should go to the website and make sure that you know what's available to you today. Let's do that. So if we go back, I don't know how much you go to the website to click on anything besides the papers. If we click on Cascades, I've moved a couple of these papers to today's episode. Mike Eddy's 2015 paper looks like this. It's an absolutely dynamite paper we're going to get a ton out of in the next couple of letters. Here's Ray Wells, which is the manifesto that he wrote right as he was retiring from the USGS, synthesizing his full career working on Siletzia-related issues. I showed you the Andy Minor undergraduate thesis, and then this is coming, which is a classic old document from 1965, which I want to share with you as well, a couple of key diagrams. What else is at the website? You know by now that if you click, oh my God, why does this happen every time? So there was a brand new episode of Nick on the Rocks, constructed and scouted mostly by Gary Paul. People loving this new episode. They're also loving the Anacortes episode. These are being posted every Thursday on YouTube for free, so you're welcome to go check those out. Here we are today. And then the one other thing I wanted to show you is that I posted, I had a number of videos. Okay, that's not there. There's a brand new video that I posted yesterday. Why isn't it there? In the Cascade Video Library. Okay, I don't know. I'm going to go to YouTube then. This thing, I guess I forgot to put it there.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Easton, Washington, Lake Cochise, more specifically, and up on this ridge.
So that's a new video that I posted yesterday that I filmed a month and a half ago, and that's where we're headed as well. The break-off belt, once we get Siletzia accreted. So there's a lot of things kind of in flux right now. We are in kind of a transition time, but I hope by now, that we're setting the table for starting the Cascade Volcanic Arc, and this Siletzia drama is a major chapter that needs to be comprehended by all of us before we start the Cascade Volcanic Arc. Okay, did that, get rid of it. Good. Let's build it. Let's build it. Build what? Siletzia. Feeling especially improvisational this morning. Let's try the most basic part of the story. And I'd like this to be a sketch for orange time 56 million years ago. So what happened 56? I didn't think that was such a big date. What are the two big dates so far in the entire alphabet? 51 million years ago and 46 million years ago. 51 million years ago is the accretion or the addition of Siletzia to North America. And 46 million years ago is the birth of the Cascade Volcanic Arc. But 56, a full 10 million years before we start the Cascade Volcanic Arc, I'm making a sketch. Why? We're starting to build Siletzia. And now pretty much everybody who has done work on Siletzia, pretty much everybody agrees that it was the Yellowstone hotspot, the Yellowstone mantle plume, that built Siletzia. And I think most of you have heard this message by now. 10 years ago, it was a radical thought for everybody, including me. The hotspot that's underneath Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming today, the Yellowstone hotspot that used to be in southern Idaho 10 million years ago, the Yellowstone hotspot that was at McDermott Caldera in northern Nevada 17 million years ago. That same thing has a much longer history than 17 million years? And that you can actually find the precise location on the planet where the Yellowstone mantle plume was active 56 million years ago? Yes, according to pretty much everybody now. And it's locating where Siletzia was created. And you'll notice that Washington's up here. And Oregon's here. And San Francisco's down here. This thing, if you really take all this into consideration, we're building Siletzia off the coast of Northern California and Southern Oregon. And I think it's my choice, I'm pretty sure it's my choice to not get into the details of why we need that location. I think we're just going to use it. That might be the wrong call, and maybe a bunch of you will want to get into that. But between today's episode and the next episode, I think this might feel better. But the point is, we're eventually going to get this Siletzia large igneous province to add. And the suture is here. And the amount of basalt. Are you a rookie? This is what basalt looks like. There's not much to look at. It's fine-grained minerals, Jockey. These are fine-grained minerals that are black. There's really no minerals that you can easily identify. Oftentimes it's rusty because there's a bunch of iron in these basalts. Basalt. So there's 14 times the total volume of basalt built on this thing compared to the amount of basalt today in the inland Pacific Northwest with the Columbia River basalts. So this is an incredible pile of basalt that's built very quickly. And you're like, okay, tell me more about that. What does that look like? Well, I redrafted the cross sections that I showed you last time. I saw Gary Paul's comment in the live chat before he went back to skiing with his son. And I took that to heart because Gary knows the Western Melange Belt well. So let me try to show you that. So this is review from last time, but it adds a couple of new thoughts. So if we're before 56 million years ago, we don't have Siletzia out here in the water. And we have built our melange basement. We've already talked about it way too much probably. The crystalline core basement. And we have well-behaved layers of sandstone and shale covering the basement. And the west coast is Seattle. And this is a nice tidy picture of the inland Pacific Northwest. We're kind of hinting at the peaceful scene. The peaceful scene. This is a peaceful scene. This is the calm before the storm. Lazy rivers and swamps being recorded by the Swauk Formation, known in the Bellingham area as the Chuckanut Formation. More coming on that. But we're talking about building Siletzia right now, which is a large igneous province. And this thing is building quickly. And for a while there was debate. Do you really need a Yellowstone mantle plume out there to build Siletzia? Can't you just do it with some sort of mid-ocean ridge? And the folks who look at the chemistry of the Siletzia basalts and also look at the volume of the Siletzia basalts, half of which is up in Alaska today. It's not all down here. Remember that part? Half of this huge, large igneous province was sent to Alaska and is known as the Yakutat. So the Siletzia, original large igneous province, that's a hell of a lot of basalt. And most people say, I don't see how you can do that on just a simple spreading ridge. By the way, what's the age of building Siletzia, at least the birth of Siletzia? 56 million years ago. Do you know anything significant about 56 million years ago globally? Let's come back to that in just a second. So these two sketches look very similar to what I did last time, with the rivers still flowing east to west. But this is the one that I changed, because Gary Paul in the live chat reminded me that we're going to get a bunch of beautiful black chert pebbles that we're going to feature in a video before we quit today. And those black chert pebbles are coming in large part from the Arcosic melange that has been uplifted in response to the accretion with Siletzia, and this new highland is really chewing away, like we've gotten rid of some of the Swauk, and we're chewing away at the yellow, at the grello. And it's these black cherts that I want to focus on late today. And the rivers, as you can see, and I'm exaggerating them now, the rivers are flowing in the opposite direction. And what is this big change? 51 million years ago. That's where we're headed for the rest of our outline. Let's go back to the slides and keep going. I'm having fun. Hope you are too. So this is from the Ray Wells paper, and it's quite a diagram. And I want your eye to be drawn to this oceanic plateau. Built starting, he's got it. Why does Wells have it starting older than 60 million years ago? I'm confused by that right now. Anyway, I never noticed that. Anyway, he's got this incredible, he's got Oregon. Ray Wells is mostly an Oregon person, I think. He's based out of Portland. And so he's going Oregon on the right, and then Washington, as we go left, and then British Columbia. Just kind of odd to me, but that's how he chose to do this. That's fine. And so Siletzia is underpinning all of this, but we don't want to be overwhelmed. But look what's younger, and on top, we're going to get into some of this. Jeff Tepper's worked with the Grays Rivers Volcanics, I think, and the Gobel Volcanics, and some of this will be crucial to us, I think. I'm getting overwhelmed. Let's move past that. Okay, we're to the peaceful, quiet time. So when did I start teaching about Siletzia in Geology 101? Probably 15 years ago. And I put more and more of Siletzia into the Geology 101 class because it's important. And because I now have gotten to know most of the geologists, whether they're currently working on this stuff or have recently retired like Ray Wells, I have featured many of them with interviews and other things. So I'm invested that way. Jeff Tepper, big part of this as well. But my point here is that since I've been teaching on Siletzia, I know which slides I show every quarter are going to get a reaction. This one always gets a reaction. This one always gets a reaction. I think this was created by a guy named John Figge, who I've never met, but I think maybe John still teaches at a 2-year school in Seattle. And people love this because it's representing this peaceful, quiet time prior to 51 million years ago. This is a visual for the Swauk Sedimentary Basin, and the students love it because they're like, wait a minute, the West Coast was here at I-5? And there was a south coast of Washington? That's weird. And where are the Cascades? And I'm like, we don't have the Cascades yet. They're like, there was a time before the Cascades? It's like, yeah. This is prior to 51 million years ago, and this is this calm before the storm. This is essentially a map of Washington between 60 and 51 million years ago, corresponding to those cross-sections I just made. Another Ken Clark illustration, taken from those panels that you maybe were introduced to for the first time in the Tamanous Rock video with Jeff Tepper. So Ken Clark, with his colored pencils, is doing a beautiful job showing us this tranquil, peaceful, calm scene with lazy rivers and swamps draining the inland Pacific Northwest, and the West Coast is at Interstate 5. It's at Seattle. It's at Tacoma. It's at Olympia. It's at Portland. Now, I find this interesting. Pre-plate tectonics. There was a publication that I've always seen in my file cabinet, and I've never really spent much time with it. I think it was originally written, and there were some original illustrations like 1946, and I don't think I've ever found those originals. But it was revised in 1965 by two people from the University of Washington. J. Hoover Mackin is a famous name in Pacific Northwest geology. And I don't know why they made this little pamphlet. It's kind of a general thing. It's like perfect for what I do, but I don't really know what the audience was necessarily. But they did it. And I've always had this paper copy, but I never had a digital copy. And viewer Steve in Portland sent me an email recently and said, here's a digital version of that. If you know about this thing, you might find it useful. So we're going to use the J. Hoover Mackin. Is that his name? J. Hoover? J. Hoover? No. It is. J. Hoover Mackin, just like J. Edgar. Okay, stop. Look at this. Before knowing about Siletzia, before knowing about tectonic plates, before knowing about any of this dynamic stuff of the last 60 years, just by studying the details of the sedimentary layers of the Swauk Formation and the Chuckanet Formation, these guys are figuring out that the West Coast was at Seattle. Isn't this cool? So this is Alan Carey. I don't know if he was a geology professor as well or just an illustrator that was hired for this project. But this is Swauk time. This is the tranquil, and they have the rivers flowing to the west. This is Seattle. This is Wenatchee, Yakima, Spokane. And this is what we call a block diagram. So it's not only a map, but it's a couple of cross sections tossed in as well. You can see the thick sedimentary cover on top of the basement. So you have this at nickzentner.com in digital form. Thank you, Steve. And by the way, there's other block diagrams of different times. I think we'll keep coming back to this, but this is a modern day version of the same thing. So here's what Seattle looks like today. Ellensburg, they've happened to have a heart and put us on the map. Yakima, Spokane. So here's the Cascades today. And I couldn't resist. I had to flip to the back of that thing to look at the Pleistocene. Do you remember last winter? Do you remember one of the major questions from last winter with the Ice Age stuff? Well, well, well. 1965. Look what they have on top of Spokane, Washington. An ice sheet. The Spokane ice sheet. They've got it on the frickin' map in 1965. They were teaching this at the University of Washington. They were teaching that a portion of the Okanagan ice sheet came right down the Columbia to Sharon's house in Malaga at Wenatchee. What happened to that narrative? Don't get me started. Don't get my blood pressure up this morning. That's last winter. This winter, we're not fighting any narrative like I have the last two winters. I don't think. Maybe we'll get into some resistance from something we're doing, but you remember last winter, the whole thing was what happened to the Spokane flood and the Spokane ice sheet. And 2 winters ago, it's like, why are we not even willing to consider Baja, BC? All right. How many we got? Yeah, 933 live viewers. Not too early for you. That's good. Thank you. Okay. So in addition to the visual of the rivers gracefully flowing from east to west to deposit these tens of I screwed it up last time. I'm screwing it up again. There's miles of vertical feet, apparently, of the Swauk Formation. Although when you talk to some field geologists, like we will in a second, Ralph Hagerud, who knows his stuff, he's like, it's so folded and faulted, we can have a bunch of repeating section. I don't really think it has to be that thick. But one of the hallmarks of the Swauk is not only the river sands, but it's these incredible fossils. This is in our display case, just down the hall. And these are incredible leaves, plant fossils, in the Swauk deposits, and these are some of the black shales of the Swauk. And these are some of the black shales with even bigger palm fronds at Western Washington Geology Department. I'm sure their pitch is, hey, you wanting to become a geology student in the state of Washington? Why don't you come to Western Washington, where our plant fossils in our building are bigger than those hillbillies over there in Eastern Washington and Central Washington. Western, Central, mwah, mwah. Western, okay, you get it. This is the Swauk Formation officially. This is the Chuckanut Formation officially. But you know it's the same thing, right? You remember it's the same thing? We're in this quiet time. Not only rivers, but bogs and swamps. And I'm circling back now to one of my lingering questions I just had for you. Yeah. The Swauk is full of palm leaves. This even has 3 dimensions to it. I'll show it, Docky. We have a ton of shale. Shale is just the mud in a swamp. And the shale is dominated by tropical plants. Tropical plants. And you're like, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that fossil? Did you go to the Everglades in Florida? Did you go to some tropical place? I'm like, no, I went to Ellensburg, Washington. You're like, what? It's like, yeah. The shales north of town, they're under snow right now. The black shales of the Swauk Formation in the Blewett Pass area are loaded with plant fossils, and the leaves are from a tropical time. It was hot and humid. Hot and humid. Here's my question to you, students. Why? Why was it hot and humid here 56 million years ago? Why was it hot and humid during this tranquil time where we have sluggish rivers and a thick buildup of river sand and black mud? And it's both the river sand and the black mud that have these tropical plant fossils. I'm stalling for you. I'll give you, there's three choices in my mind, and I do this in my classroom, and we usually get all three contributions without a whole lot of effort. I'll start you with one. Oh, it's humid? Oh, it's humid in eastern Washington? Well, isn't it humid over here because there isn't the Cascades yet and we don't have a rain shadow effect? Like we're getting all sorts of Pacific moisture blowing all the way to Idaho? And isn't that why we have such humid leaves? Good thinking. Thank you. But that doesn't explain the hot. We need hot temperatures. I'm no botanist, but to get banana leaves, literally, in central Washington, we need to be not only wet, we need it to be hot. Again, I'm going to go to your questions or comments. Little 25 Victor, thank you. That's usually the next thing that's brought up in class. Was North America closer to the equator? Like there's continental drift, there's plate tectonics. We know that our current latitude, Ellensburg's at 47 degrees north latitude today. Was it at 30 degrees north 56 million years ago? In other words, you see what little Victor is talking about? It's a good thought, but it's not right. Because we know precisely where North America was located on the globe using isochrons in the Atlantic Ocean floor to position North America precisely that long ago. And you know what the punchline is? Ellensburg was even farther north 56 million years ago than it is today. In other words, our swamp, our peaceful scene, was even farther away from the equator than it is now. And yet it was hot and humid. So the third choice, which I'm sure many of you are saying, is that 56 million years ago was a globally hot time. The climate of our planet has fluctuated over the years. And there was a major hot time globally 56 million years ago, where there are palm leaves in Alaska today. And Alaska was not at the equator 56 million years ago. I'm not even talking about Baja, BC now. I'm just talking about much of the present continents as we know them were more polar and less equatorial 56 million years ago, and yet there's all these hot and humid plant fossils. There's all sorts of evidence, we're not getting into it. There's all sorts of evidence that proves that global climate was far warmer 56 million years ago than it is today. And that's why we have these hot and humid plants in the Swauk Basin. Now, an obvious question is, why was it so hot 56 million years ago? I only want to touch on this was it so hot 56 million years ago? Was there anything going on 56 million years ago globally that could have spiked the temperature globally? Was there anything globally on a major scale that could have been happening somewhere to somehow boost the temperatures globally? There is a connection between the history of large igneous provinces and global hot times. In Siberia, flood basalts, hot time. In India, a different time. Large igneous province, flood basalts, it's a hot time. And for reasons I don't totally understand, maybe it's because the Siletzia published research in the last 20 years is too new. I don't think it's that controversial, but maybe it is, to suggest that our large igneous province was large enough. In other words, building Siletzia was big enough to create a global hot time. And for all I know, there's a bunch of published work that's already out there and I'm just unaware of it. But it is a known correlation, if you're not following what I'm saying, between mantle plumes, large igneous provinces built typically in an oceanic setting, although I'm not sure that's right, large igneous provinces being built, flood basalts, and massive amounts of additions to the atmosphere. That's as far as I can go. I don't know that much about it. But I find it pretty fun that there may be a growing connection scientifically between our local large igneous province really not being a local story. It may be a global story as far as creating these hot, humid plants worldwide. You're like, I think we're on a tangent right now. I don't know. Maybe we are. But that's kind of a fun thought. And I don't think it's just me making the connection. All right. How are we doing? I think I want to make sure we get to the accretion of Siletzia. That's our goal before we quit this morning. It's just after 9 o'clock local time. What else we got? Yeah, in the black mud are not only plant fossils, but footprint fossils. I don't know how to pronounce this. Diatrima, I'm sure you'll help me. This is also on display at Western Washington. And here's what these beasts look like living during this peaceful time. And you're like, if you're one of these little guys, you're that guy. I don't think it's such a peaceful, tranquil time. Okay, I take your point. Next point. The Swauk black shales and light gray arcosic sandstones are not as undeformed as I'm presenting them. I'm giving you a very simple picture of the Swauk. It's just a bunch of horizontal birthday cake layers, right? That's the way I'm presenting it, with rivers flowing east to west until we get to 51 million years ago, which is where we're headed, by the way. But that 51 million year event was monumental. That is a big number for us, and there's all sorts of things starting to happen 51 million years ago, including intense folding, faulting, warping, rotating of those originally horizontal layers. And so this is the Bellingham area where the Chuckanut Formation, which is part of the Swauk, you get it now, the Swauk Basin. Look at the beautiful folding portrayed by Dan Coe, the same guy that was in that photo with Jordan Carey. And there's even in our hallway, I just took it down a second ago. This is one of the many beautiful posters published by the Washington Geological Survey. We have these all through our geology building. Come to Central Washington University, where we have Washington Geological Survey posters on the hall walls. Not big fossils and footprints and stuff. We got posters. pretty sure you can get these for free if you contact the Washington Geological Survey. But this folding of the Swauk is significant. And you can see it like this, but you can also see it in other places. Okay, first time we're really looking carefully at the Mike Eddy paper. And let's just slow down for just a second. I'm talking to myself. We have almost 1,000 watching live. Thank you for being here. Slow down, boy. The last 15 minutes, I've been talking about the Swauk. And here's Mike saying, this stuff here is the Swauk Basin. This is 51 million years ago, going back to 60. Okay, it's working. It's working. For a change, my sketches actually sync with some published work. It's not an accident. I'm doing my homespun stuff based on important geologists who are doing careful work. And there's nobody more precise than Mike Eddy. You'll see that at least. There's nobody, Mr. Precise is Mike Eddy. So I want you what's the first takeaway? We're going to keep coming back to this. This is one of my most favorite diagrams of all of Mike Eddy's work. Look how everything changes 51 million years ago. So in other words, before 51 million years ago, we have the Chuckanut Formation, the Southeast Chuckanut Formation, who gives a shit, the Swauk Formation, the Menashtash Formation, and it's all the same sandbox. And what's the gray? It's volcanic material. Felsic means sticky and high silica. Mafic means runny and low silica. We'll do more of that next time. But suddenly we're getting all sorts of lavas and ashes and pyroclastic flows and calderas and breccias. That's all happening for a reason at a particular time. And before work like Mike Eddy with his high precision dates, we couldn't tell that story very carefully. The error bars on the dates were just crazy. Plus or minus 3 million years? What? Not so with Mike Eddy. We'll keep coming back to this. Okay. I guess for the first time today, we're going to look at a couple video clips. And Ralph Hagerud has spent a full career with the USGS. He did a bunch of amazing mapping in the North Cascades of Washington. But I got to know Ralph recently, and coming out of the pandemic, I asked Ralph if he'd want to go out in the field and make a couple videos. So we went to Slate Peak for one video. You may have seen that one in the North Cascades. But this is one where Ralph is taking us to the Swauk Formation, which is not far from Blewett Pass. It's near a place called Camas Meadows. I did a video there with Randy Lewis during the pandemic. But let's have Ralph show us some detail in the Swauk now that we know the significance of the shale, the plant fossils, the arcosic sand, and even the inclined beds. We know why they're inclined, because of Siletzia colliding with us. And it's really us colliding with Siletzia. Ralph.
I have no idea if this is Chumpstick Formation or Swauk Formation.
Is this thing playing?
I have no idea if this is Chumpstick Formation or Swauk Formation.
What's going on?
Typically browner, redder.
Technical difficulties. Hang on, please. Weird glitch. Why is this happening? Let's go full screen.
I have no idea if this is Chumpstick Formation or Swauk Formation.
This isn't playing, is it?
Maybe it's sure.
Oh, I got it there. I'm sorry about this.
I have no idea.
Somewhat disorganized looking at this, but typically browner, redder.
I have no idea if this is Chumpstick Formation or Swauk Formation.
And we should look at the conglomerates here.
Can you help us get a sense of just how you would approach an outcrop like this?
See, This outcrop is red and gray and locally green.
Red, gray, and locally green.
And
This is where
after
I get frustrated.
a couple of
My old
years
age, I
of
can't see.
focused and somewhat disorganized looking at the Swauk and the chumstick,
Yeah.
my impression is that the chumstick is mostly white and beige, and the Swauk is all different colors, but typically browner.
It's not that
redder.
soft.
I thought it might be serpentite, but it's
I don't think so. But
And we
there's
should
lots
look
of
at the
dark
conglomerates
argillite or
here.
chert,
Yeah.
perhaps a basalt.
reddish greenish granite. This is where I get
More
frustrated.
argillite. My old age, I can't see.
Maybe
That
maybe a chert,
okay?
a phyllite.
Interesting one.
So you're calling this a conglomerate, but we're in a well
It's not
lithified
that
unit.
soft.
Whether it's
thought it might
chumstick
be
or
serpentite,
Swauk,
but
we're more than
But
30
there's
million
lots
years ago
of
easily.
dark argillite or chert.
And
Yeah.
anyway, lots of different kinds of rocks in here.
Perhaps
A lot of them
basalt.
dark and fine grain. Not a lot of granite,
Maybe.
but some.
Here's a nice coarse granite
Reddish
clasp.
greenish.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for the technical glitch. I think we're working right now. I'm pausing it. Hopefully we can go right back to it. But I want to interject every once in a while. So instead of just looking at kind of garden variety Arcosic sandstone, which is the dominant look of the Swauk, right here, Ralph is zeroing in on some pebbles, part of a conglomeratic part. So in other words, in addition to the black shales and the gray sands, there's also places where there are conglomerates, which means there are river rocks. And these black chert pebbles are where we're going to finish today. So here's our first look at some pebbles. And you'll see the significance with my sketches one more time before we look. I think we're going to finish with a Nick on the Rocks episode this morning. God. Let's move on. Ah.
Now, up there you can see the impression of a stick, a big stick. It's
Oh, yeah. Wow. I got to go up and see that. I can't have somebody watching this video and then go, you didn't go up there to take a look at it? Man, I'm a fossil guy.
Hey, we got a problem? I'm sorry. This feels like the backyard 4 years ago. You've got 2 audios going right now? Let's just pause for just a second. I'm sorry to finish on this. I wanted to just build towards this Nick on the Rocks episode. Right now, can you say 5x5 head? You're looking at my head. Are we 5x5 right now? There's a delay, but I guess I'll just play this second video clip because we're going to see some of these palm fronds or these tropical plants, which are really cool. I didn't even expect them. Okay. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to continue and hope for the best.
Damn, Ralph, you're pretty spry.
I wish.
Holy shit.
Sorry, Patrick.
There's more down here.
Yeah.
Maybe another vote for Swauk versus chumstick. It's quite a bit of plant stuff in the Swauk.
There's a fair bit in the chumstick also. But
there
here,
is.
Here, this is an impression of a piece of wood, I believe.
What else would it be?
Well, we could argue bark or some banana leaf or.
It's got to be a fossil, right?
Yeah,
Plant
it's a fossil, plant fossil.
Yeah.
And if I knew my plants better, we could maybe look at it and say, oh, it's therefore this old. But especially log imprints tend to be fairly undiagnostic. Oh, and here's one right here. Also.
Oh, yeah, good. Let me circle around. So we've got decent dates on the Swauk now, 59 to 49 million years ago or so. That's mostly Mike
Yeah.
Eddy's high precision stuff
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah. And the chumstick comes in at 48 to 42. That's including the roslinish stuff at the top.
Including okay.
The youngest stuff. Does it get that young?
I'm just learning right now. I don't know about these newest dates, but yeah. So with the Swauk, we're right in the window of the Paleocene Eocene thermal maximum, and pretty swampy stuff.
The other thing that I find interesting is the Swauk then is by the ages, which are not that conclusive because we don't have enough data. The Swauk is the same age as the Chuckanut.
Oh, good. Yes. Now that's.
It spans sort of the same thing. The Chuckanut, we don't know how old it is that well, but it's
All right. That was a throwback. Like, you're all watching in different delays and things, so people are typing in 10 minutes after we're showing something. I remember that frustration when I was first learning how to do this thing. I don't know what happened there, but let's move on. I've got two more things I want to do. I want to show you a quick sketch of some of Mike Eddy's detail to show you the precision and really set us up for the next episode. And I'm pretty sure I want to finish, because I've been teasing these black chert pebbles. I want to finish with that. And then we'll go to some live Q&A. This one might run a little longer than typical. So, Docky. So now that we are teasing it there, we know the general story here, and we have landed now with this idea that we're accreting Siletzia, and the rivers have changed their direction because of the accretion, and we're eroding some of the Arcosic melange. That's all fine. But there's another thing going on that's being recorded through this whole story, and that is Mike Eddy coming up with some detail that we didn't have before. This is rough. I just barely lightly sketched it. I think I'm going to make it a little bit sexier for the next episode, but I want to show it to you now. I'm going to really come in here. So this is going through the Mike Eddy paper with a fine-tooth comb, the 2015 paper, his first major paper. And he's saying, here's the Swauk, black shales, gray sandstones, some conglomerates occasionally. The conglomerates are mainly right in here. But Mike is, by going through master's theses like Andy Miner and others, he is realizing that there are some occasional volcanic layers at different levels within this quiet sedimentary basin. And people maybe knew about those tuffs or ash beds or however you want to think about them before, but nobody sampled them and got a precise date like this kid is doing using this fancy lab designed by Sam Bowering at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So for the first time, I hope you can see not only are we getting dates for these things that were known, like up by Bellingham, I guess this one's also up by Bellingham. These are like some sort of volcanic event during this quiet time. Look at this precision. 56.835 million years ago, plus or minus 0.5. Or this one, 53.676 plus or minus 0.023 million. And just glancing ahead, when things really get wild, we're going to have all sorts of rhyolites and other things that Mike is reporting on during his PhD work right here in central Washington. That's why it's so exciting. Nobody's come in with this kind of dedication, field work, but also has the chemistry ability to come up with this geochronology information that just blows everything away, and it's not even close. And you're like, so what? You've got a precise date. Well, then you can answer very specific questions about what's going on tectonically involving Siletzia, involving Siletzia accretion, involving the break-off belt. It was in the video yesterday if you saw the Silver Pass Volcanics video, and starting to build the Cascades. There's a lot happening between 51 million years ago, the accretion of Siletzia, and the birth or the dawn of the Cascade Volcanic Arc 46 million years ago. There's an incredible amount happening, and this kid's got the dates to prove it and keep track of what's going on. God, it's good. It's good. So yeah, when we finally do the accretion thing, I don't know why Ken wants 53. I guess that's Jeff Tepper too. Why 53? I didn't think we had any accretion. Or maybe this, I'll leave that alone. Wait till next time. Wait till next time. We're accreting it. Wait till next time. I'm making an audible. We're about done. Yeah, okay. Good. We're finishing with this. I called an audible. This is going to be a 5-minute episode, hopefully with proper audio. And it's the complete episode called Big Four Mountain, scouted by Gary Paul. And it's Swauk Formation that's been tipped on its head, and the black chert pebbles I want to include in this episode because that's exactly why we know of the docking of Siletzia. In other words, to set this up, we're going to go to a place north of Snoqualmie Pass that has these black chert pebbles that are eroding from the Grello and coming into the Swauk. And everything's been inverted. And who cares? Because it's documenting the accretion of Siletzia. So I'm not sure this PBS episode worked because we were trying to just verbally talk about this whole thing. I'll let you decide. But I felt like maybe this is the proper place to show this entire video, filmed beautifully by Brady Lawrence a year and a half ago. It's just I was getting to know him. But it's this work that needs to be added to that video to really get the full effect. And I'm hoping that you'll see the full effect as we finish this episode. Please work. Let's go.
There's a basic rule in Geology 101. If you have sedimentary rock layers, they are created horizontally, always, around the world, like in the Grand Canyon, and like here at Big Four Mountain. But if you start following those horizontal layers here to another cliff, those horizontal layers are now vertical, and something happened starting 51 million years ago to rotate these sedimentary layers to such an extreme position. What happened here? The sedimentary layers here involve a river and involve sand. I mean, this is river sand. We all know what sand is, but this is not beach sand, this is river sand. And these sand grains are all about the same size, but they're not the same mineral type. They're salt and pepper sand. And so therefore the sandstones deposited horizontally before the Cascade Mountains even developed, between 59 and 51 million years ago, with rivers flowing from the northeast and flowing to the ocean, are these beautiful arcosic sandstones. This is normal sand deposition. A deep sandbox stretching from Bellingham over to Ellensburg before the Cascade Mountains grew. No big chunks, normal, horizontal, fine sand. Okay, river deposition, river sand making sandstone, we're good. But there's also sedimentary rock here that looks like this. And it's rock. It's a conglomerate. And each of these beautiful stones is rounded, and they're made out of a rock called chert. White and black chert river cobbles. That means that a river was suddenly more energetic, faster water, higher energy. And better than that, the rivers that deposited these grains were flowing towards the east, coming away from the coast. Something caused these rivers to change their direction. Flowing west before 51 million years ago, the rivers are suddenly flowing to the east younger than 51 million years ago. And the evidence is there's exposed chert beds, black and white, just to the west of here. So these stones in this conglomerate tell us that the rivers flipped their direction 51 million years ago, increased their energy level, and by the way, at the same time, the chert beds are rotating to the 90-degree position. What's causing all this strangeness in these local sedimentary basins? So here's the answer. Before 51 million years ago, out in the water, off the coast of Washington, was a huge island called Siletzia. Bigger than Iceland, but similar with basalt lava erupting. North America collided with Siletzia starting 51 million years ago, causing the rivers to change their direction, causing chert cobbles to flow away from the impact site, and the result is inclined sedimentary beds at Big 4 Mountain in northwestern Washington.
Thanks. I'm back live with you, and that just feels good. It always kind of bothered me that episode was, I think, a little bit too ambitious to try to get those concepts across geologically. I mean, the work by Gary and Brady, outstanding for sure. But I'm not sure the context for the messages from that episode got through, and maybe it worked this morning. It's approaching 9:30, a little longer than I wanted this morning. I'll give you a shot out the window just to see the things are nice and light out there now. Let's do a little bit of live Q&A before we sign off this morning. Do you want clarification on the black chert pebbles? Do you want clarification on the 56 hot time, the Yellowstone hotspot issue? We covered a lot of stuff this morning, I think. Hopefully a mix of old and new concepts for many of you. Uppercase, please, and I'll try to answer just a few. There's Sky Cooley. Please clarify, did Siletzia build directly above the Yellowstone mantle plume or as a thick basalt pile along a transformed fault? Is the heat source the mantle plume? Thank you, Sky. Depends on who you talk to, but I purposely avoided getting into a divergent plate boundary, a spreading ridge, or a transform offset on a spreading ridge today. But that's where we're headed in the next episode. So I'm going to try my best to somehow synthesize a number of those Idaho mini-series videos I did this summer, where I was asking, you do geophysics. Which plate was where, when? Offshore of the Pacific Northwest. You do near trench magma geochemistry. Same questions. You do structural geology. Same questions. You do helium isotopes in basalts. I think I can find some consensus between those different conversations. But Sky, as I'm viewing it, the heat source has to be the Yellowstone mantle plume. And it seems likely that the Yellowstone mantle plume is coming up at a boundary between two ocean plates, similar to Iceland. And beyond that, we can play with different geometries. I'm sure John Nash will have some strong opinions. Let's keep going. Scrolling back, looking for uppercase. Pat from Nat Cheese, is it possible the Siletzia collision and break-off dynamics cracked open upper mantle to form the Yellowstone hotspot? Well, that's another question, Pat. Are we talking about, if we're believing the Yellowstone mantle plume is responsible for Siletzia, did the Yellowstone mantle plume start 56 million years ago? There's only one strong opinion that I know of for a Yellowstone mantle plume older than 56. And that's Stephen Johnston, who says the Yellowstone mantle plume existed 70 million years ago to create the Carmax volcanics. That's from 2 winters ago. I don't think we want to go there. But most people are not willing to buy that long a history of Yellowstone mantle plume, but I am, personally. Kevin, is the pre-51 million year old a quiet time? Or if that was a quiet time before 51 million years ago, how does that relate to the eastward subduction of the Farallon Plate? Well, that's, again, what I was asking this summer. I was asking, is there a volcanic arc in Idaho pre-51? And most everybody said no. So then I guess you need a very shallowly dipping Farallon Plate that is bypassing the entire Pacific Northwest. Still doesn't sit right with me. So I'm starting to realize right now, how am I going to do this in just one episode on Thursday? It's like how many hours worth of stuff this summer with that Idaho series. It's all in the video library, but boy, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Your questions are both exciting me and depressing me at the same time. John Nash, is the South Washington Cascades conductor relative to the Paleocene-Eocene timeline? I don't know what that is, John. SWCC. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. Will, does the Seattle Fault connect to the Lewis and Clark line in eastern Washington? They seem to align. Now we're into Basil Tikoff country. By the way, everybody loves Siletzia except Basil Tikoff. That's kind of an inside joke, but it's kind of real. A nothing burger, as Basil famously said. Could be, Will, but my memory is that Lewis and Clark line started heading north into BC, but maybe I'm not remembering right. Seismic Mike. It sounds like 51 million years ago, the age of accretion of Siletzia is accurate within 1 million years. We can probably get into that as well, Mike, because we're not building Siletzia during a 1 million year span. Like, it's active starting 56, but it's even erupting basalt while the accretion is happening, I think. And then you're asking about the timing of the accretion itself. I think most people view 51 to 49 as this, these things aren't happening at the snap of a finger. So we're accreting this loaf of rustic sourdough over the course of 2 million years. And I'm just remembering right now that there's a bit of accretion earlier in Oregon than in Washington. So it's kind of a heel-toe kind of a accretion. Tom, you love me, and this is your first time attending. Thank you, Tom. I love you too, and thank you for being here live. I'm glad you're joining us live for the first time. A few more. Brandon, how do we know for sure the Columbia embayment existed? Brandon, I'm just ignoring that. No offense. I said in the last episode, I don't know what to do with that embayment, and I'm just ignoring it. Saber wants to make Yakaletzi an official term. Sure. Make some T-shirts. Daniel, the Yellowstone hotspot was the source of the Sierras? No, I don't think anybody's saying that. Patrick, does the Seattle Fault span the Siletzia suture? And was it pure transform before clockwise rotation? Yeah, I skipped an animation that we will show on Thursday, getting clockwise rotation into this, Patrick. But does the Seattle fault span the Siletzia suture? I think so. Isn't that the whole point of this sketch? Am I not getting your question right? Does the Seattle fault go across the suture? I'm trying to show that, I think, but maybe I'm not getting your question. Let's do 3 more questions that I don't understand and I can fumble with. Josek Live. How can we get Siletzia total in 3 to 5 million years? It's a lot of basalt. I guess if you have a mantle plume, you've got a pretty hot furnace. Thanks for the question. I remember trying this a couple of years ago, and I never got anybody to satisfactorily do it. Everybody, rightly so, everybody compares Siletzia with Iceland. They're both large igneous provinces. They're both hot spots that are at a spreading ridge. I think everybody's on board there. I hate that phrase, corporate. Everybody agrees there. But what I would love is that I've never seen anybody write out or calculate. Can we calculate the total volume of basalt with Iceland compared to the total volume of basalt of Siletzia? And it's hard with Siletzia because it's been ripped in half. Half's in Alaska, half's down here in the Northwest, plus a bunch of it's in the subsurface. But I would love to just say, hey, man, from this point forward, if somebody can do it, I guess I don't know how to do it. Otherwise, I'd try to do it. I'd love to say Siletzia is just like Iceland, but 10 times more stuff. Think of Iceland that's 10 times bigger. I think that would be really powerful, but I don't know how to do it. David, did the change in drainage flow utilize the same river channels? Thanks for the question. I doubt it, and I'm not sure if that's true, how we would be able to prove that. Well, maybe it makes sense. I guess it's an excellent question. I guess my first thought back is, did we have river canyons? Or I'm visualizing more lazy Mississippi-like rivers or Colorado. I don't know. That's an interesting question. That old school Cascade publication from 1965, I think, was showing more incision than I'm visualizing. Charlie, what was the parent rock of the Black Chert pebbles? Black Chert. But where's the Black Chert? In my mind, the Black Chert are big blocks of Black Chert within the blender of the Western Melange Belt. But if Gary Paul is with us, he can probably correct me. Maybe there's more units that are the source. But that's what I wanted to do with this revised sketch. I wanted to have yellow, grello at the surface. And we're eroding not only Black Chert, but we're eroding all sorts of stuff from the Melange. And the Ralph Hagerud clip that didn't work, I guess, audio-wise, had more than Black Chert pebbles. It had serpentinite pebbles. It had all the stuff that's in the blender and the Melange, that ugly Melange, has been eroded into these river cobbles going the other way. That's the incredible part. Mike Eddy's the first to say we flipped the river pathways because we have this accretion event. One more and we're done. We're down below 900. I said we were flirting with 1,000 this morning live. That was very encouraging. Not that it matters, but nice to see so many people here live. That ain't no whale. It's Yakaletzia. Thank you, Pat. One more. Gary is in here. Thank you, Gary. Slow Life asks, how do we know how much of Swauk is under the Columbia River basalts? Do we extrapolate? Can we drill that deep? Thanks. That's a great question to finish with. We know next to nothing about what's buried beneath the German chocolate cake. There has to be a lot of Swauk under the cake. We have a few drill holes from the oil and natural gas people. Most of that data is under lock and key. And even with the Swauk that we don't have buried, nobody can figure out the total thickness of it because it's so screwed up. And I think it's mostly screwed up because of the Siletzia accretion, the addition of Siletzia, the collision between North America and Siletzia, but I think there's also Yakima clockwise rotation folding as well. But because you can't easily find marker beds within the Swauk, except a couple of things that Mike Eddy found, it's tough to know where you are in the section. And if you take the time to find that YouTube video with Ralph Hagerud called Swauk Formation, you'll see the full thing with proper audio. And he comments on that a fair amount. A toast to you. Pushing 2 hours on this one. Oh well. Here's to you for being here, live or in replay. Thank you for your time on a Saturday. Or a Sunday. Or in 2027, or whenever you happen to see this thing. Here's to the health of your parents, your grandparents, your children, your grandchildren, your cousins, everyone in your community. And I'm pretty sure that we will devote one more letter to the Orange 50s. We've done the major message, which is 2 headline events are happening during the 50s, pre-Cascade Volcanic Arc. What are those 2 events? Building Siletzia and the Swauk Peaceful Time. And I guess if you want to add Siletzia Accreting in there too, that's still in Orange Time. Not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's likely that we will struggle with synthesizing the entire Idaho miniseries into one letter this coming Thursday. And then a week from this morning, I think it's official, I need to do this, we're into the blue. A week from today, we are into the blue, and we are getting very serious about kicking off the birth of the Cascade Volcanic Arc. Thank God. Thanks, everybody. I love you. No. I love you. I love you. And I love you. That's how much I love you. I'll see you on Thursday. I will see you next on Thursday, December 19th at noon Pacific time for session F, Ocean Plates or something like that. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. We'll see you in quite a few days. See you next Thursday. Goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. And no, it's people walking. The camera is still herky-jerky. Why is that? Nat, we got to figure that out. Hasta la next time, says Fernando Lopez. Goodbye, Fernando, wherever you are.